How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. A video just dropped over on the Modern Rogues channel where I teamed up with them to see what would happen if we made a janky pot still and then distilled Dr. Pepper with it. That's the kind of thing they're into. It was a hell of a lot of fun, but because of that, there's going to be a lot of new people on the channel over the next few days. So if you are a regular, welcome to Now Please guys. It's awesome to have you here. If you are new, I wanted to make this video for you to do two things. One, clear up a few things that happened over on the Modern Rogue channel, and two, give you a down and dirty quick crash course on home distilling, just in case it's something you want to get into. Welcome Distiller everyone, I'm Jesse and this is the channel all about chasing the craft of home distillation and making it a legitimate hobby. If you are new here and you just came from the Modern Rogue, welcome guys, it's awesome to have you here. Before we get stuck in though, let's get myself a drink because this is a distilling channel. This is the super easy LME whiskey, and the reason I want to show you this one is it's a start to finish video. Everything pretty much in the distilling process is kind of included in it a little bit, and I'll put a link for that up top. So cheers guys. It's getting better by the day. Alright team, so let's get stuck into that episode I made with the Modern Rogue, which is an absolute blast, and I have to say from the get-go, those guys are just as much fun in person as what they are on screen, and the whole production is it's not a show. That's literally what's happening. It's sure as shit not scripted. I showed up with a bit of a plan. We'd come up with a bit of a plan on what we were going to shoot, and about 10 minutes before the cameras turned on, we completely changed the whole premise of the video. So yeah, absolute blast. Awesome to work with them. Great people. Anyway, so the first thing that popped up is people were asking about the pressure buildup, and is that what we were worried about when we were stirring the Dr. Pepper and degassing it? The answer is no. And the answer is no, that's not what we were worried about at all. The reason you degas is to stop a boil over or a puke. Essentially what that means is the liquid in the pot, if it bubbles too much as it heats up, it can actually raise the level of the liquid up over the line and push the liquid itself all the way down through the condenser. And we definitely don't want that. So it's not about the gas itself. It's about the fact that the gas might make, you know, the liquid too unruly, essentially. That's all we're doing. So we're not worried about the pressure's not a thing. We're not worried about that. It's just the boil over is an issue. And people seem to link the CO2 gas to what I was worried about with the flammability and the explosions. And CO2 is not flammable. That's not what we're talking about at all. That was when we were talking about if you were going to distill alcohol. The alcohol vapor is definitely flammable, and it's something to be cautious of. So when we were distilling Dr. Pepper, it's whatever. If it's leaking, it doesn't really matter. No big deal. But if you are going to be making, you know, your own alcohol, that is definitely something you need to care about. So that's all we were talking about there, guys. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about the fact that we distilled freaking Dr. Pepper. I honestly and truly had no idea what was going to happen when we ran that through the still. That's so far out of my wheelhouse. Lack of alcohol, addition of sugar, just so many things were different about that. And it was exciting to be thrown in the deep end and to sort of try and guess on the fly a little bit what was going on. We speculated a lot behind the camera, and obviously that was all cut out for editing, but yeah, hell of a lot of fun. Not something I'm ever going to do again, I don't think. So if you have jumped over here from the Modern Rogues episode, I'm guessing that something about distilling kind of catches your attention. So I need to warn you guys, if you do start down this road, you can get hooked on it pretty quick. It's one of those hobbies, there's always something more to do, there's always something more to learn, there's always another way to improve what you're making. And for people that are into that, it can be pretty addictive. So just so you know guys, you may want to stop now if you don't need that in your life. Like I said, it's a super rewarding hobby, but you do have to take it seriously. This is not, you know, a child's game. And while the safety issues in the general public are blown way out of proportion, they're not nearly as dangerous as the random person on the street will tell you it is, because it's really not. You can do this really safely, guys. There is safety concerns that you need to take seriously. So my number one suggestion is, if you're going to consider this, find the safety information first, get that out of the way, get that under your belt and use that as your base. I do have videos I do have some videos on this, team, and I will link them. I'll put a link of a few things I suggest you go and see in the description of this video, so go check that out. Number 2 is that distilling is not necessarily an entirely solved problem. And what I mean by that is that there is some, not controversy, but discussion around a few different things. And then because it's illegal in a bunch of different places, the information isn't spread that well. So you can get information from someone that is actually quite knowledgeable on distilling, but some part of that knowledge that they give you may not be the best advice for you. And it may not even be what the rest of the industry or the rest of the home distilling community agree on. Any information you get on home distilling, make sure you find other sources to get more information from to back it up. So once again, guys, I'll put some links down below in the description. Now we need to get into what you actually need to learn. So the first thing you need is a still, and we alluded to it in the Modern Rogue episode, but there are 2 different types of still. Basic, guys. There's a pot still and a reflux still. A pot still, all it does is, that's what we made on the Modern Rogue. It boils the liquid, it transfers the vapor, and it recondenses it. This is great for creating stuff like whiskey, rum, anything where you want to keep as much flavor from the original ingredients as possible. And something like this, I can taste the original ingredients in it. A reflux still, on the other hand, is mostly, because it's not black and white, is mostly good for creating vodka and then anything that you're going to make from vodka. So if you make vodka, then you can turn it into gin. And the main difference is that a reflux still, instead of just evaporating the vapor and sending it over to the condenser, it evaporates the vapor, recondenses it, evaporates it, condenses it, evaporates it, condenses it. So for a pot still, if you put 10% into the pot, you might get 50% out the spout on the other end. With a reflux still, you can push that all the way up to 95%. If you're going to get into this hobby, you're going to have to decide if you want to make your own still or buy a still. And there are advantages to both, which honestly, if we got into that now, it would take, like 4 hours to talk about. But just know that if you're the sort of person that has some skills behind you, if you're used to working with metal, if you can weld especially, or braze or solder, anything like that, honestly, you probably want to think about making your own still. You're going to be able to make something that is much more affordable, something that you know inside and out, and something that's probably better suited to the exact thing that you want, the exact products that you're interested in making. On the other side, you can go out and buy some stills, and honestly, guys, this literally anything from a cheap $100 pot still off AliExpress all the way through to, there's a Genio sitting behind the camera right now. I'll show you a clip of that. This thing's worth, $15,000, $16,000 in New Zealand, about 10, 11 grand in America, depending on what the options you take on it. So there's a huge range, guys. Honestly, if you think you want to buy a still and you're just not quite sure where to start, drop a question in this video and I'll see if I can point you in the right direction, right? So once you've got the equipment, you're going to need to start making some stuff, and the first thing to do is to make a mash or a wash. Essentially all that is getting sugar from something and then getting it ready to be fermented. For home distillers, there's 2 basic things that you can do here. One is that you can make it with sugar, so you can just use table sugar, add a few other little things into it, pitch your yeast, and you're good to go. Pretty easy. The other way is to do an all grain mash, which is pretty much the same thing as what beer brewers do. Home brewers, if they're making beer, they take grain, mostly malted barley is probably the most popular thing. Well, it's definitely the most popular thing. And they put it through a couple of processes which get the starches to turn into sugars and be ready for the yeast to digest those sugars and create the alcohol we want. Once again, guys, this is hours and hours and hours of information, depending on how deep you want to go into that. At the same time, you can put a little bit of research in. If you put 2 or 3 hours of solid research into it, you'd be able to do it yourself. So the next thing is fermentation itself. The yeast pretty much takes care of that, although there are a few things we can do to help them along their way. But after fermentation, we get into the fun part for us as distillers, which is distilling, putting that liquid into the still, running the still, and it honestly, it does feel like alchemy, guys, the whole process. But like we once again said in the Modern Rogue video, if you imagine that this stuff's coming off the still, and I collect it into this jar, fill it up, and then put another jar under, fill it up, put another jar under, so on and so forth. As you go through the run, these jars will taste very different from each other, and the width and the breadth of flavors is absolutely amazing. So that is where part of the skill in distilling comes in, is tasting all these different things that are coming off the still and deciding what you want to keep, what you don't want to keep, to try and craft a beverage that heads in the direction you want to take it, right? Now, at this point, if you're making vodka, that's cool. You're done, you're dusted, you're finished. You can blend it back down with water, cut it back down to whatever proof you want, 80 proof, 90 proof, whatever it happens to be. If, however, you are making something that's a brown spirit, that's what you're aiming for. If, however, you're making something that's a brown spirit and you want to age it, you're going to need to introduce oak or wood of some description at least into the equation. Now the big guys do this in barrels. They make a big ass barrel, they fill it with spirit, and they put it away for years. The problem with that as home distillers is that we can't make that amount of product. That is a whole lot of spirits to make. You can of course get smaller barrels, but the problem with a smaller barrel is that the surface area to volume of liquid starts to get really wacky, and you can't necessarily age it for as long as you want to. So what a lot of home distillers will do is take a glass jar like this, put the spirit into it, and then put wood inside it. A little piece of wood like that will go inside, and because they're two separate things, you can mess with the size of the wood versus the volume of the liquid, and of course you can mess with the different types of wood, the different chars, the different toasts, so on and so forth. Alright team, so I know everything I've told you so far is going to be super frustrating if you want to get into this hobby, because all it's doing is kind of wetting your beak just a little bit and not actually giving you any solid answers. I get that. That's what this hobby is all about. If you find that fun, if you find the research stuff fun, if you find learning new things fun, getting frustrated, getting pissed off, getting stoked that you worked it out, if that process is what you're into, distilling is for you. But I do have literally hundreds of videos on this channel that you can look through to check them out. I try to be really good about actually getting back to people in the comments section too, so drop some questions down there if you want. And if you want, you can check my website out, chasethecraft.com, for some more information. So if that sounds like something that you are into, guys, if that's a hobby that you think you might want to get stuck into, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Hit the like button on this video for me, subscribe down below, to get all the other videos. Till next time, guys, keep on chasing the craft.